I'm H.M. Jones. I'm here to read you a little from my new release, released today. Let me adjust that for you. My new release, Ravien's Night. Let's get it close there. There we go. Whoop. Back. That came out today. It's my first YA sci-fi book, my third novel. And some of you might know my adult novels, Monochrome and Fade to Blue, which were released by Feminine Collective. This is being released by Madam Geek. So today I'm going to read to you a little bit of the book and hope that you enjoyed enough to go ahead and go out and purchase it for $3.99 on Kindle. You can also buy it on paperback. If you want it as signed paperback, I'm going to make that available on my website, www.hmjones.net. So I'll be doing that within the next 2 days. I'll have the option for a signed paperback as well. It'll cost a little bit more because I'll have to ship it, but you'll be able to have it signed, so that's good. So I'll go ahead and get started reading. I'm reading from Chapter 1, Merch Market Nab, and this is set in June 23rd, 2100. So almost a century beyond this date. So it is set in future United States, though it's not named that anymore. So I hope that you like this little selection, and here we go. Al dodged behind Jerry's gray covered merchant tent. Jerry sold black market rockets from this tent, the kind rebellious rich teens and 20-somethings put on their pods for illegal air races in the Chip District. The guard trailing Al skittered around a pushcart seller who was squawking about hybrid strawberry melons. The melon merchant screeched to a halt, and two of his robust hybrids tumbled off on a wooden cart onto the pavement, tripping the stiff guard. He flailed his arms like turbine mills to keep himself from falling and was just able to right himself. He put a meaty hand to his stun gun when the melon merchant started asking for recompense. I'm reading it on a Kindle, the newest version, which quickly stifled further requests for cred. The guard kept his large palm on the gun, caressing it. He probably hoped to get close enough to Al to use it. Fat chance. Merchant guards were a fit crew, but they were usually weighty with bulk muscle to scare away potential pickpockets and robbers. Bulky guards were slow guards. This one was no different than the hundreds of other meatheads policing Merch Market in the dim districts. The guard's arms and chest bulged under his chemical-reinforced rayon bodysuit. But none of that girth would help unless he could catch Al. The suits were actually stellar. They were as thin as regular nylon, but when hit with the force of an object, fist, bullet, rock, and countless other projectiles, a chemical was released, merging with a rayon-like fabric to form an impenetrable body shield. Only wealthy merchants outfitted guards with armor flex. Not that armor flex was real flexible once activated. Aiming a slingshot at the rayon suits had been a favorite activity of his since he was old enough to sling a sharp rock. Al chuckled as he ran, thinking about the way guards stiffened to discomfort, their faces pinched and strained once struck. Every person's reaction to being hit is either fight or flight, but armor flex made either of those options impossible for a handful of seconds. For those few sweet moments, guards would jerk like 2000s robots, all stiff joints and clunky steps. This was the reason Stun Gun Happy Stew was trailing Al. By now, Rinko was sure to have used Al's distraction to pocket the rectangular disc the flustered tech merchant whispered to Stun Gun Stew was worth more than his life. Al knew when to get his hands on a prime pick. He didn't steal because he liked it. He stole for more practical reasons. Starving, freezing, and suffering were not high on his agenda, and for political reasons. The tech merch was a known patsy for Gentech, and there was nothing worse than sucking up to the demons who ran that sideshow. Gentech were politicians through and through. They were descendants from the same conservative tools who began dismantling public aid and promoting corporations as people since the early 2000s. Slowly, corporations, Gentech, and the League started taking over healthcare, social marketing, schools. In 2080, Gentech heir Killigan James III, or the fourth clone of Killigan James Sr., Gentech's founder, mandated barcoding under the guise of recording federal offenses. By that time, Gentech already controlled the military and police forces. By 2085, misdemeanors were also barcoded. A misdemeanor was any personal affront a Gentech lackey could imagine. In 2090, Killigan James IV was named President of the United States of Western America, succeeding his recently deceased father, Killigan James III. Killigan James III died young from complications related to his cloning. No one was shocked by the outcome when his son took his place. Elections weren't really democratic anymore, though the country hid under the guise of democracy. The same family always won because those in power wanted to stay in power and had the money and sway to buy elections. Shortly after King James IV's inauguration, however, a hijacker working for Trollfront released barcoding database information to an underground social network called Troll Times. Everybody who was anybody followed Troll Times, even if most pretended not to. Within an hour, Troll Times was flooded with outraged comments from citizens who had not realized the extent to which they were being barcoded. It turned out the barcodes didn't simply keep a database of offenses in a secure system to track progress of criminal individuals, as was Gentech's business statement. Instead, barcodes allowed for GPS tracking of coded individuals, detailed their spending, and pried into all aspects of their internet use or call logs. To the horror of all citizens, the barcode also released a chemical upon implementation which sterilized the barcoded individual. Barcode sterilization was 98.9% effective, according to Gentech's no longer top secret research reports. Al was the rare 1.1% exception, having been born post-sterilization to Eliza Ravien. There were riots, but they were quickly quashed by police and military forces backed and paid by Gentech. Most politicians who wanted any sort of power were also in the pocket of Gentech and urged citizens to remain calm, go home, live crime-free lives, and not worry about consequences put upon the disruptors of peace. Nevertheless, riots continued, the population enraged and unable to be quieted. Every rioter caught walking the streets past the legal curfew was promptly barcoded until fewer and fewer rioters took the streets. A new fear of barcoding kept many citizens indoors, afraid their lives would be decided for them if they caused trouble. Tecton, the country's most populous city after the devastation of World War III, became a somewhat peaceful place to live, if you were in good with Gentech or were fairly wealthy. But ever since the barcode intel was leaked, citizens began joining the troll front. Al's ma joined just after being barcoded. Al's life was a series of close calls and violent encounters. Al used violence, even enjoyed hurting other men. The discomfort he put the pursuing guard through brought joy to his heart. Then guilt hit. If I get joy from another person's pain, am I any better than Killigan? How much like he was to that despicable man, his father? He thought of his own crystal blue eyes and straight black hair, neither of which stemmed from Ma's genetics. Her mud pie eyes and mocha hair, like a cup of hot coffee on a cold night, were a stark contrast to his features. His earth-toned skin was hers, as was his long nose. But was he really like her? Al could hear the guard wheezing uncomfortably in his hot, tight rayon suit. Al took a deep breath and dashed out into the open, allowing the chase to continue. He loved a good chase. The burly guard hollered behind him. "You're making it worse on yourself, vermin. When I catch you, you're gonna pay big time for making me run." The threat would have been more convincing if he hadn't coughed between every sentence, and if his gait hadn't slowed considerably. Al wove through vendors, waving at Christo, a fish merch, who often left him as leftovers at the end of the day for no charge. Al figured the merch did it because he fancied Ma, but he was not raised to be choosy about free food. Christo laughed heartily and teased the guard. "You better pick up your pace, guardsman, or you'll be losing your post as surely as you're eating the boy's dust. Give him hell, Al." Al smiled and raced ahead, increasing his pace, enjoying the burn in his muscles, the pressures in his lungs, the swift ins and outs of the stalls he'd memorized over a span of 16 years. Slum City was his home, and this guard had forgotten that. Most merchants shooed Al away playfully as he zoomed past their stalls. Ina chuckled as Al plucked a yellow rose from her stall and yelled over his shoulder, "I'll bring payment later, my lady." She flung a wave of white gold hair over her shoulder and winked at him, her grass-green eyes sparkling. "You better, you naughty boy." She chuckled and went back to bundling a bouquet for a shocked and haughty-looking man in a gray suit. The guards slowed as they rounded the end of the merchant tents and wagons. The yarn peddler, Olroy, saw Al coming and shook a fist at him as if he were angry. Al tried not to laugh. Olroy liked to keep a low profile. The old man stood just after Al whizzed by his wagon. A basket of spools sitting upon his skinny knees toppled to the ground. A cloud of dust rose to meet the air around Olroy's feet. The guard could not stop the acceleration of his feet fast enough to avoid the metal spools. He skated across them like a circus clown. One spool finally caught him off balance and he fell backward, his arms frantically spinning and his body armor stiffening again when he hit the hard-packed dirt of the brick of Merch Market. The guard grunted and cursed Olroy's clumsiness. Al slowed to a trot. He could hear Olroy groveling over the guards, offering him water as he picked up spools. Olroy apologized so profusely Al almost believed him. The old man still got it. He'd have the guard drinking water and eating mushroom pastries in 15 minutes, consoling him as if he were a grandson. All the while, Al would be safe at home with the haul of the year firmly in his hands. A gleam of sunlight on metal shone in his eyes. His foot caught an uneven patch in the ground. He did a somersault, making a tisking noise as the metallic monkey landed lightly upon his shoulder as he rose from his somersault. Rinko, what took you so long, pal? His robotic companion tittered and chirped in frustration. Al couldn't be sure, but he was fairly certain Rinko was upbraiding him for being the slow one. The smart bot was programmed to speak like a monkey, but was extremely advanced. He behaved and thought more like a small and nimble human. You were waiting for me? Well, that's hardly my fault. I had to give the poor man a fighting chance after all. Rinko tittered high in disapproval. I'm sorry to keep you waiting, Your Majesty. How'd the haul go? Was the distraction enough or did that skinny slime ball of a merch one-up you? Al kept his lips from pulling up into a smile, not wanting the smart bot to read his expression. He knew Rinko was intelligent, so he wanted to see if the bot caught the joke in his voice. Rinko stuck out a rubber tongue and blew a raspberry at Al. He flicked a slim purple rectangular disc into the air. Al snatched it with nimble fingers, laughing. I knew you'd do it. You're a pro, Rink. His friend chirped gleefully. Al could have sworn the disc hummed when it hit his skin. He frowned and pocketed the thin, expensive tech, hoping it didn't have a track set into it. Trackers made noise. That was the problem with bugging tech with a track. But Al had heard a track before, and this was different. It sounded a little like a song, high and haunting. Don't short out now, Al. Let's just get this thing home and see what's so special about it. You've disabled a track before. You can do it again if need be. Al didn't stop to examine the curious disc in the streets of Slum City. He was near home now, which meant he was coming into some seedy territory. He didn't need the local thieves to hear or see his haul. He could smell the thick, humid stench of overfull garbage cans. Skinny stray dogs bounded next to his heels, nipping playfully as Al jogged home. They would stop to scratch fleas or chase rats eventually, or would tire of running in the sun. Al let them run with him. Local gangs would be less likely to hassle him if he was running with a pack of hungry mutts. Yeah, it was the seediest part of Tecton, but it was his part of Tecton, and he loved it. He patted Rinko on the head, and his robo-friend beeped contentedly. Let's go home, little man. We'll see about our nab then. Rinko bleeped his agreement. So that's the first section of the first chapter, Merch Market Nab. And there's a second section. It's a little shorter. And so there's also an epilogue where you get to learn about Eliza, his mom, and how Al came to be. And I hope that readers like this kind of take on Arabian Nights and Aladdin. I grew up really liking to read Arabian Nights and liking to watch Aladdin. And as I grew older, I realized there were some problematic things about those books, or about that book and that movie. And I wanted to make something more modern, but that had that feel, that kind of desert, arid feel, which is why this is set in future Nevada, but also that had kind of a modern approach to how tyranny could occur in any generation. So this is written for young adults, but I feel like adults would like it as well and probably understand some of the references in a way that maybe some young adults wouldn't or would. I don't know. I have all the faith in my readers, so I imagine most of my young readers will understand those references as well. I have a little map in here. It's on the Kindle version too, and it's in color in the Kindle version, which is cool. And my little dedication is such. Written for those who've learned to love themselves, and for those who know that their successes do not depend upon how they're perceived by others, but by how they utilize their own limitless talent. And as someone who grew up as a geek and remains geeky to the end, I think it's very important for my readers to understand that they have a lot to offer this world and that their talent is not at all diminished by what other people think about them. So live life, read some books, and hopefully you'll enjoy Al Rabian's Night, my first YA novel.